As the vote counting continues in Pennsylvania with its 20 electoral votes at stake, and it'll be game, set, match if it goes for Biden. The president's lead has not only been shrinking, but as Andrew showed us at the top of the program, it's been vanishing almost. My first guest tonight knows the state as well as anyone, and he's going to walk us through how the vote's going using his own map of state here. Senator Bob Casey, Democrat from Pennsylvania. Andrew projected, Senator, that when it's all said and done, probably a margin 150,000, maybe even north of that, will be the Biden victory. Obviously, you're closer than anyone. Does that math sound right to you?
Well, Richard, I think I've certainly heard numbers like that. I was more conservative, a little more conservative, talking about 100,000. That would be. I don't think numbers like that will be determined until the vote is certified. So it might be that there's a victory, as I think there will be for Joe Biden, but a victory that will be declared, and he will be the president-elect, but the counting will still continue. So that may take a while. It always does. I've been in 6 statewide general elections, and my vote got higher many days, even weeks after Election Day, until certification. So the only thing I'm not certain about the margin. I'm not certain about the timing of when we will know he won, but I'm certain he's going to win the state.
And that's the only thing that really matters. We're going to hear from the president theoretically in 20 minutes or so. I have no doubt that we will not be hearing a concession, but we very well may hear more conspiracies or even more threats of lawsuits. The one concern I always had was, if there's an ambitious court, the argument that the state Supreme Court in Pennsylvania made the decision about how the election was going to be conducted because the state legislature wouldn't make an equitable one. Is that something, especially given Kavanaugh's dissenting opinion in a prior election case, I think for Wisconsin, that gives you any pause, could open the door for reexamination at the Supreme Court?
Well, with this president, and there's a lot that gives me pause, and this court has, I think, caused a lot of people concern. But here's what I think is fundamental. The president may continue to engage in the kind of bizarre behavior that no one expects from any leader, let alone a president, and he will bring every legal action possible, legal action that is frivolous and unfounded. But in the end, if it does reach the Supreme Court may not take it. They could exercise discretion not to take a case. If they do, they have to think long and hard about interfering in an election, especially after the voters have made their decision. And I think there's a real question, and we'll hear more about this, I think, in the litigation, but there's a real question about the reliance of the voter. You tell a voter certain things about how to vote and what to do. And based upon that, the voter goes out and casts their vote. They have an expectation, in fact, they have a right to cast the vote and then to make sure that that vote that has been cast is counted. Anything that thwarts that undermines it, or interferes with it, I think would place the court in a place where their own legitimacy, the legitimacy of the Supreme Court, would be questioned. And I don't think that's something the court wants to engage in.
And I think you said it. I mean, to do it after the fact would be, I think, beyond unconscionable. You know, we're going to be speaking with Ed Rendell in a little bit, and I'm going to bring up the story that he and Joe Biden, when it was then Senator Biden, actually talked to the late Arlen Specter and got him to come over to the Democratic side late in his career in the U.S. Senate. And my question to you is, and I know we've got 2 runoffs in Georgia, but that won't be for a while now. Mitch McConnell, I think, interestingly, yesterday would not go there, with the president at least, in trying to undermine a free and a fair election. He said, count the votes. I even think it's interesting, Senator Perdue in Georgia right now said, count the votes. There doesn't seem to be Capitol Hill support for this president right now. I'm curious, do you think that holds? And do you think in a Biden presidency, if we get there, that we could see a different Senator McConnell that we've seen for the last 4 years?
Well, I think on the latter, I don't want to read too much into or I don't want to base too much of my my assessment of the future based upon what Mitch McConnell did in this instance. But I do think it's particularly noteworthy that Mitch McConnell and other Republicans have not been willing to walk that plank with the president's, particularly discordant and kind of at variance with what they usually do. Having said that, I think we should expect some Republican politicians in Washington to join right in with President Trump. But so far, at least in the Senate, there doesn't seem to be too much of that sentiment. And I think that further undermines the president's arguments.
Are you worried if the president goes where, at least I think he's going to go in 15 minutes, Senator, the possible consequences of that, the possible, that you got a lot of people who are even going to voting places where I can't believe, the decency, these civil servants that are going through counting the votes and the public voting and the numbers they did, and this idea of this grand cabal without a shred of evidence. If the president continues to push that, given the fervor of some of his supporters, how worried are you?
Well, you always have to be concerned with statements the president makes and be concerned of the impact it has on people's lives. For example, if he made more statements and took other actions, we'd have a much less severe virus. It wouldn't be raging across the country. So we all wish he used his voice to convince his supporters to wear masks and to take this seriously, but he didn't. He did the opposite. But I have no doubt that he'll try to stir up the emotions of those that support him, and even ask them to take action at some point. Having said that, you notice that even when he was stirring up the same kind of sentiment before the election, telling people to go to polling places and be, in essence, to be prepared for a conflict or even engage in conflict, it didn't happen in the way that many had feared. I hope now that we're beyond Election Day, and even fervent supporters of him who did not engage in that kind of conduct on Election Day, I hope that they would stay in that frame of mind. But yeah, you always have to be concerned, and that's why I think it was important that Joe Biden came out today, not only asking for calm and patience, and thereby asking folks to respect the will of the voters. So I think it's probably more likely than not that people will not engage in that kind of conflict. But I have no doubt that the president will either explicitly or implicitly encourage them to do that.
A sad statement, but unfortunately, I think you're right. But anyway, I always appreciate it if you've given us the time here, and also you were right. I will say this last week, you were right about Pennsylvania. You were right yesterday, or I should say Monday, and it looks like you saying just hold on, everybody, count them all, and you'll see Pennsylvania going blue. Senator Casey, thank you for the time.
Thanks, Richard.
All right, everyone, when we come back, the perfect guy to talk more about Pennsylvania and also the state of the Democratic Party. He'll join us. Ed Rendell. He was governor. He was mayor and DA of Philadelphia. Plus, he ran the whole Democratic National Committee. He'll join us next.